there was no cause at all for, it was sort of made up. And then one of the women there said to me, she said, "Why is she so mean to you? She's not mean to anybody else." And I was not ever mean to her back. I didn't talk back to her. I didn't ever curse or like lose my temper or anything like that. But a couple of other women even said, "Why is she so mean to you?" Other people noticed. They knew she hated me. And all I could say was, well, she's friends with somebody that cheated with my boyfriend, or my fiance. And that was all I ever said, if I said anything at all. So then I was, basically at that point, I was forced to be out in the streets completely, and I had police following me around everywhere. I was having to try to find some place to sleep in between buildings, or just to rest, because all of the places were closed in Wenatchee. It wasn't like some place where everything is open all the time. And it was summer, so it wasn't freezing cold, but I still got cold. And basically the Wenatchee police thought it was hilarious. I was basically followed around and watched no matter where I went. It was complete, it was absolutely humiliating and degrading treatment. And I tried to spend some of my time at this Coast Hotel, like just up late at night, working on Wi-Fi and doing other things. And it was kind of a roof over my head in a sense. And then all of a sudden I was being told by this woman, she said, the owner, the Italian-American man from Seattle, was telling all of his employees to tell me that I was banned from his hotel. And then the police came over and said, "Yeah, we were told that we got a report that you've been prostituting at this hotel." And, or actually, no, the police did not tell me that. What happened is that one of the employees for the Coast Hotel told me that the police, the Wenatchee police, told them that I was prostituting myself. So it wasn't like what I was told by this, one of the long-term senior, kind of human resource person employees there, was that it was Wenatchee police that were trying to cause problems for me. And they basically they approached the Coast Hotel people to ask about my whereabouts and how often I went to that hotel, because they said, they told the Coast people that I was prostituting myself there. There was a prostitute. That it was from the Wenatchee police. Same Wenatchee police that are under the control of Chief Jones, and Chief Jones is married to Marianne McIntosh's daughter. So Chief Jones is related to the Attorney General in charge of the case against me with my son, the CPS case. So when I found out that the Wenatchee police were calling me a prostitute to try to keep me out of even sometimes going there for Wi-Fi or being safe at all at any time, I was really shocked. I mean, I shouldn't have been shocked by anything at that point, but that was very clear evidence that the Wenatchee police were part of trying to put me into danger. And so then she said that then this decision to ban me from the place came from this Italian-American man who owned it in Seattle. And at the time, at that Coast Hotel, he had 2 flags flying from the Coast Hotel. One was for the United States and one was for Canada. So we had a Canada flag flying and a US flag flying. His hotel was the only one that had a US and a Canadian flag, both. I'm not sure why that was. But the Wenatchee police basically defamed me as being a prostitute, and they had never approached me about it. And it wasn't true, and there was nobody who would have ever come forward and said anything like that. And pretty much they did this to me after somebody who had acted as an informant and to tell me about judges that were colluding against me. He told me that a couple of judges and police officers jointly used women, that they tried to sucker into prostituting and being escorts for them, and that it happened, my impression, and I think what he had said, is it happened at the Coast Hotel. So if a judge and some of the law enforcement were used to doing that kind of thing, and they somehow found out that somebody had told me about this, I don't know, I guess they wanted to switch it around on me, and then try to make themselves look like they were good, and like I was a prostitute, and they were just trying to, quote-unquote, protect the public. They basically just tried to smear me. Any possible way that they could, they tried to smear me. And I was not intimate with anybody. The only person who had accused me of being a whore was Chris Rizzolo, who is connected to the police in that town. And I was threatened and told not to tell anybody after, and given razors by guards, by police officers who were working as guards at the courthouse. And he called me a whore because I wouldn't kiss him. But I didn't take any money from him. Basically, I ended up sleeping with him after I was incapacitated because he wanted to make sure I was drunk first. And then after that, I knew that I'd been set up, and it was pretty much the last time that was going to happen. And I knew that he was connected somehow to federal people. So I didn't get close to any man or trust any man at all, or having a drink next to him from that point forward, because too many times I'd had people colluding to set me up for something like that. So it was sort of the, could have been a favor that the Wenatchee police were doing for that man as well. Just to humiliate me. And after I was pretty much totally on the streets and with police following me around and watching me out in the open, and I went to, and I had gone to churches and, asked for help with a hotel room here and there, but pretty much the resources ran out, and that's what somebody had wanted to happen. They wanted me to be out of all resources. And I kind of felt like at the point where I was being pushed out of all of the homeless shelters, they were still trying to force me to go back to Alvaro Pardo in Washington, D.C. And some of the police officers, when I looked for an apartment later, after that point, they kept telling me that only if I was with him. They wouldn't rent to me. They were like, some of them were landlords, and they weren't going to rent to me unless I was with Alvaro Pardo. And so I noticed that there were it was very important to some of these officers to have me, they were mad at me. They were punishing me for not marrying him. And I also, thought possibly that by forcing me out of all housing, somebody was hoping that I'd just ditch my son again when I had nothing. I mean, no money, no housing, and then at that point that they maybe wanted me to disappear and maybe end up dead, the next time around. Or give them an excuse to just adopt my son out, claiming that there she goes again, when the only time that I left the one time was because Judge Hotchkiss had committed such a huge crime, basically, in obstruction of justice, that I was scared to be there. That was why I left. I left for that reason, and to try to get diagnostics of my having been tortured. But I wasn't going to just jump around. I wasn't going to jump off or jump around and run off all over the place just because I didn't have money. And I think that's what they were trying to force. They were trying to force me either to do that or really trying to force me to be with Alvaro. So then I finally found out about, somebody told me about this community action program where you can have federal housing money, and it was through the economic recovery program. It wasn't just for people who are homeless, it was for anybody who was displaced, mothers, fathers, families, anybody who had been affected by the economic downturn. And it was a ton of money that even Wenatchee had applied for through a grant, and that they had in the reserves. So they had this enormous amount of money, and it was basically distributed through Seattle. They had to answer to Seattle to the Washington State, because the federal government gave them the check to Washington State, and then they decided what to do with it. And the federal government monies were specifically for people who didn't have housing, and it was kind of like a bank account where you had so much money. If you qualified, there was this certain amount of money, like $13,000 or so, and you had to use this $13,000 per person within 2 years' time, because it was just a short-term program. And you could choose any apartment that you wanted, as long as it was to code, and have this money, some of that $13,000 pay for your rent and utilities on a monthly basis. So it was a very good program. And I qualified, and then I ended up signing a contract with this person, Steve Mays. And, well, first I qualified for the program, and then the task was that I had to find my apartment. So I looked all over the place. I spent a lot of time, a couple of weeks or more, looking for a place to live at one of those apartments or a house or something. And if I had been in a house, again, it showed stability. It also made my chances more likely that I would have a good argument for having my son returned to me, or having other arrangements made. But the state didn't want that. They wanted me to always look homeless and like I couldn't care for my son and mentally ill at the same time. And when I tried to get housing, several times I found out that the landlords there at the places where I was trying to get this assistance or trying to rent a place, I found out that they were cops. A couple of them were cops. One time this cop came over and he said that he was the landlord. And I hadn't known that. And then he said, well, yeah, I'll rent to you. He said, but eventually what he told me was that he would only rent to me if I had a fiance. And he didn't say if I was married. He said, if you have a fiance that you think you could get back together with, then I could rent to you. So basically I was being told by police officers that I couldn't get housing and I'd be forced to be homeless unless I agreed to get back together with Alvaro Pardo. And I never called Alvaro Pardo and said, what's going on? Can you, I'm wondering if you want to come back over here. Yeah, I was being threatened and coerced to get back together with Alvaro Pardo. Because, let's see, he's really not connected to the government at all, right? He's not a cop. He's not FBI, doesn't work with the FBI at all. Right. And then I have cops treating me like that. And after that, I didn't make any phone calls to him. And I signed a contract with someone named Steve Mays, and it was a big mistake because I found out he was connected to police. And when I stayed at his place, I was really tortured. And it was probably from just the remote torture technology that they'd already been using against me. But a couple of times I remember waking up and I felt like I'd really been drugged too. My legs, I was tortured so badly that that my legs were swelling up to twice the size.